Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. It is Chris and Ben here for Outer Rim Transmissions, episode 130. There's a big story we're going to be talking about today. That is Dave Filoni has been promoted to the chief creative officer over at Lucasfilm for the Star Wars projects. We're going to get into that, what it means possibly for the future of Star Wars, and more on tonight's episode of Outer Rim Transmission. How's it going, Ben?
Good. Just had a really good Thanksgiving weekend and everything. Ate some good food. Got back. Actually started on my summer diet on Friday. That's what I usually like to do, just to get started. Basically, a couple months earlier, even than the January New Year's things. So got started on that. Already knocked off 4 pounds of weight on the scale. Even though 4 pounds of weight in a couple days isn't actual. It's just water weight. But hey, it's a good little momentum starter, and so just started on the summer diet this weekend.
Yeah, for me, it's the sugar that kills me when it comes to the holidays. I'm usually okay with everything else, but I just tend to OD when it comes on things like pies, cookies, especially, are my weakness.
How I am.
Oh, it's pretty bad. I felt like I was full still on Saturday after Thursday, the amount of stuff that we had at my aunt's place.
Oh yeah, I mean that's how it goes. I mean that's how I was. Thursday, it was all right, time to enjoy myself because I know I'm starting up on Friday.
Yeah, I know. I forgot. How could I forget to say everybody happy Thanksgiving last week? I guess we were so intrigued on the Life Day discussion. Oh, and I have something to say about Life Day again. That's my week in Star Wars. I watched it again. I was crazy enough to watch Holiday Special. Because my girlfriend, God bless her heart, she's like, oh, I heard you guys talking about it on the podcast. I have to see how bad this thing is. So she was over for a couple days because of the holiday. And I was like, are you serious about watching this? And meanwhile, I have a coworker that pops in on the channel from time to time. And she said, do not show her that. Do not show her that. if you treasure your girlfriend, you'll never show her that. Because she might just, leave you after that or something. I'm like... She says she wants to watch it, so we watched it. And her view was positive. She's like, you know what? The performances were really good, but everything else was crappy. But I was like, how could you say anything nice about this thing? It's a monstrosity. But she enjoyed the singing. She enjoyed just the random rock number they had. It was really trippy stuff in there. But I almost made it through. I made it through 80% this time, because the last time I watched it, when you were watching it last week, I got to about the part with Itchy with the VR headset, and you guys will know what I'm talking about. And I tapped out after that, and I passed out. I was able to awake and at one point on the second viewing and seeing that Carrie Fisher was singing. So that was a huge surprise, because I'd never seen that before.
Yeah. I mean, she was singing. So, like I said, the good thing about this game, or this movie, was at least at minimum, we got to see the original actors when they were younger. That's the only positive real takeaway from that.
Yeah, and Harrison Ford, man, at certain points, he phoned it in. There's parts in the Millennium Falcon cockpit, and I feel like they got budget Millennium Falcon, because I was looking at the background, I was like, it is devoid of a lot of details in that cockpit. It's almost like they just hastily put together this kind of looks like the Millennium Falcon. We're gonna deal with it. But he was talking so monotone. You could tell he was just oh, this is part of the contract. I have to do this thing, and I don't want to do it. And he's talking to Chewie, Chewie, we have to hit the hyperdrive. The Star Destroyer's coming after us. We gotta go get back to Kashyyyk to save Life Day. It was so lack of emotion from Harrison Ford. I was like, whoa.
Oh yeah, I mean, he just took his paycheck on this one and pretty much just kept it moving.
But yeah, so that was my week in Star Wars, was having to go through a holiday special, not once, but basically twice in a calendar week. So yikes.
That's probably a record number of views in a week for that movie.
By
one person. It's rough. It's really rough. For me though, my week wasn't as eventful as rewatching that. I have no intention of rewatching that anytime soon. But yeah, I mean, I didn't really have too many like crazy Star Wars things going on. I mean, throughout the week, I was just like saying, I guess my week in Star Wars is basically our headline of this episode of the show. But it was more of a exciting week of Star Wars than anything, because I went into this week going, man, I'm not gonna have anything probably to talk about this coming week on the podcast, and then we get the big breaking news, and I'm like, oh, there we go. That's pretty much my week in Star Wars, just excitement and having conversations with so many people about the big news we're going to be discussing tonight. So that was pretty much my week in Star Wars.
Oh, heck yeah. So, speaking of our week in Star Wars, what was released this week in Star Wars were 3 comic books. We had Hyperspace Stories, issue number 11 out of 12. We're getting near the end of that maxi series from Dark Horse. We also had Dark Droids D Squad, I'll correct myself, issue number 3 out of 4. And we had Bounty Hunters, issue number 40. Both of those titles I mentioned tie into the Dark Droid storyline. And I will plug the Tractor Beam from Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network. My conspirator in crime, Matthew Neugebauer, I gotta commend him. He did a solo episode because he's Canadian, so he didn't celebrate Thanksgiving American, obviously. So I had him take the reins while I took the day off to spend time with family. So he has the latest episode talking about last week's comics because he was actually off last week. So we're playing catch up on a lot of the comics, but we will be resuming him and I next Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern, back to our normal time slot until some crazy stuff gets in the way or some holiday that I don't foresee, because I believe Christmas and New Year's both fall on Sundays this year. So we should be okay going forward. But yeah, that's going on strong. Tractor Beam, we're having a good time with. Again, that's over on the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network. So just type in the SWU on YouTube and you should be able to find it there, I believe. Or you might actually have to spell out the Star Wars Underworld. And they're also back. Those guys are back after a hiatus. The flagship goes live every Thursday night. So yeah, there's a lot going on Thursdays over on the Star Wars Underworld Network. You can tune in for your lunch break and then tune in as you get out of work to learn about the latest in Star Wars. So there's that. Speaking of podcasts and timing, get into the housekeeping for my network here at Starrapter. As always, we go live every Sunday. If you're watching, thank you. You can join the lovely viewers of a positive Star Wars community here, 7 p.m. Eastern every Sunday. And you can listen to us after the fact by downloading the new episodes that go live during the week. You could just search Outer Rim Transmission on Apple, Google, Spotify, any of those other podcast platforms. Just type in Outer Rim Transmission. You'll find us there, and please give us a review and tell your friends about us. Send things the good old grassroots ways, and let your friends, let your family know about the positive vibes we have here in the Star Wars community that could be a little toxic sometimes. I think I'm saying it lightly, as we've been through many times. Star Wars fandom is sometimes a little volatile. But we are in a little bit of the dead spot right now. We're kind of in limbo, Ben. I mean, we don't know what's coming out on the horizon. Well, we do know. Kind of. Because, Ben, I'll let you take this one over. I don't know where this came from, but you had sent me a message saying there's confirmation, I think it's from the Empire Upcoming magazine, that we're going to have like 5 Star Wars series in 2024. Let's talk about that, man.
Yeah, so like if you break it down, so like the upcoming issue of Empire magazine, I guess part of it got posted in an excerpt, So basically, it teases that we have... And this is the January issue for anybody looking forward to the next coming month, because normally they release the issues like a month or 2 months ahead. It's weird how they do that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they do it that way, but that's how the Empire magazine always has done things. It's always a month or 2 out. And anyways, they teased that we're gonna have 3 live action Star Wars shows, and of course the other animated things coming along, obviously like Bad Batch and Tales. But the big note was that they're saying, 3 live action Star Wars shows in 2024. So that pretty much means, the only shows we know of right now are Skeleton Crew, Acolyte. Skeleton Crew and Acolyte are in the can. And then Andor was finishing filming like immediately, soon as things wrapped up with the strikes, and they're, early on in the strikes there were still some like scab work and things going on, with just fillers and like, like the background characters and things like that. So like that production is probably wrapping soon. I would say probably in like, by the end of November, end of December sometime. Like probably by the end of December, Andor should be wrapped. So, with that, it pretty much means like we're getting potentially up to 5 Star Wars shows at least, because it'll be like Skeleton Crew and Acolyte, wherever they fall. And then Bad Batch, will be in there, and Tales. But then Andor, I think Andor is going to slip in on the back end of 2024. It'll be like, probably like around this November, December time for the 2024 calendar. If you play it out that way, because, they're not going to go and rush Andor to be an early show when it's just wrapping, because that just wouldn't make any like logistical sense. So it's got to be, if I had to guess in order, it's probably going to be Bad Batch, and then like, it's probably going to be Bad Batch and then either Skeleton Crew or Acolyte, and then maybe Tales thrown in there after those two, and then Andor to like round out the year or something.
Yeah, it's really going to be quite a busy year. I think we were talking about this back in, what was it, 2022? I think we expected, was that the year that we thought we would have like 50 weeks of Star Wars content or something like that? I believe it was, because that was the year we had like Tales of the Jedi and Bad Batch, and we had Andor that year, and we had was it Book of Boba Fett maybe in the beginning of that year? No, maybe I'm thinking of a different year. But anyway, yeah, I forget what year that was. But we were anticipating there was going to be so much content, and they ended up like spacing things out a little bit differently, so it wasn't quite that much. But I mean, yeah, this could still be a really big win for Star Wars fans. My only thing that I don't like about this is, oh my gosh, if there's so much coming out this year, I feel like there's going to be like a year where there's nothing. Because when you look at the future, it's like, if they put everything out in 2024, what's left for 2025? Because they're not really shooting much right now.
Well, Mando's going to get started soon in the coming months. I mean, that's not even speculating. That's like Brendan Wayne. I think I talked to you about this off air, but Brendan Wayne, for our Star Wars fans, they know the name. But for people who may not know, he's pretty much the main body of The Mandalorian, because Pedro Pascal's just like the voice of Mando. And Brendan Wayne posted on his Instagram, like, because he like coaches like his niece's like soccer team or whatever. And he was like, Coach Mando's about to go into production here soon. And he put like hashtag The Mandalorian or whatever on it. So like, that's going to be starting back up soon. Like, who knows what going into production means. That could mean 2 weeks from now, or could mean 2 months from now. But presumably Mando's going to be starting in the next few months. So that show probably will be done filming maybe by end of the summer or so, late summer of 2024. And then, the only thing on the horizon really for 2025 right now is The Mandalorian at the moment. Like, other than that, like, there's nothing, animated shows like Bad Batch, this is our final season. We don't know what the future is of Tales. So it's looking like potentially, if we, at this current moment, it's probably going to only be Mando in 2025 at the moment, until they announce something, of course. But
yeah. And an interesting thing is, what if, stay with me here for a second, Ben. What if, we know this is the last season of Bad Batch, season 3. What if they're already at work on the next animated series? What if they've already been out at work on the next animated series? Now I could see a 2025 release, right? We know how far in advance they work on these animated projects. You can't see a Lucasfilm that is current without any work on an animated series. There's always been something being made. Even when the movies aren't being made, they've had Clone Wars. So then they had Rebels, Resistance, Bad Batch. I think that could very well maybe be something we might see in 2025 with, a reveal at Star Wars Celebration in Japan. And then later that year, they'll give us the next thing.
Yep. Oh, yeah, I could see it heading in that direction for sure.
Yeah, so, it's good to hear this now. Hopefully in December, before we go on the holiday break here with Christmas and all, hopefully Lucasfilm just starts to peel back the curtain a little bit. Just tell us, okay? And usually they don't tell us. Usually they'll give us some magazine article, which might have a couple like snapshots of something new and be like, by the way, this thing is coming out then. Or they might just straight up release a teaser trailer for Skeleton Crew. They already have trailer for it, and they just haven't released it. I've seen it like 6 months ago at Star Wars Celebration. It's not like they don't have anything. So if that is indeed next in the pipe, then here we go. Let's get that going before people kind of forget about it.
Yeah, I mean, here's something to think about. Like realistically, like based on what some of the comments the actors made about the show. Like if you think about it, we should, I don't like to say this because it's like, it kind of makes you roll your eyes at Star Wars on stuff, but it's understandable because the strike situation. But based on what the actors from the show said, like we should basically have been starting the first episode of Skeleton Crew like next week potentially, or the week after. Like it should have been around this time. Like because one of the actors on the show, said the show was coming out like around Thanksgiving or sometime in early December. Like he said that back in like, earlier in the year, like in February or whatever. But it's just like, things get moved around and stuff. So now, now maybe Skeleton Crew is going to take that kind of like early spring show potentially. Like maybe Bad Batch starts up earlier, like late January, early February. And then like Skeleton Crew maybe is like April or something.
Yeah, when you think about it, there's always been a big Disney Plus tentpole series out around Thanksgiving. I don't remember what last year was, but I know the year before that was Hawkeye. The year before that was probably Mandalorian. Like, there's always been something around this time of year. They're going to be dropping the What If series, I think, in like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. But that's not really tentpole. I don't categorize that as mainstream. But and this is all evident, obviously, because of strikes. So, But getting into our topic prior, because we really don't have a lot of news. As I said to you, Ben, earlier, I was like, I don't want to spend any time about a certain actor talking about a project they're working on being good. I mean, anybody could say that. I'll spend 5 seconds saying Daisy Ridley was in an interview and said, basically paraphrasing, this movie is doing things I did not expect.
Yeah, that's the only interesting takeaway is the the fact she saw like unexpected things, or however she worded it. She used the word unexpected when she was reading the script. So, it just makes you wonder what that could be. So it's just like I have my own thoughts and ideas on what that could potentially be based on what we heard about like the early Lindelof stuff. So from Jeff Snyder anyways. So it makes me wonder what scripts what script she's even potentially talking about. So because like the early Lindelof stuff we heard from Snyder back in January, February this year, it was like a potential like elderly Rey. Like that's what Snyder was hearing. And it makes me wonder if they like reworked that concept or something. So like that's the only thing that makes me wonder what she meant by the word unexpected. So other than that, it's kind of just like your standard actor talking about generic stuff about the movie, not giving any information out basically because, as of right now, they're not even done writing the movie. So like she honestly doesn't have a lot of info really to give. Yeah,
it's interesting about the aging stuff. It's like we're always talking about de-aging, but they want to make her like 50 years older or 60 years older. Okay.
Well, what Snyder was saying back in his like original stuff, and he, he's a pretty good reporter in terms of like these things. Oh yeah, especially from the studio side. He's got
a great track record.
He was saying no, it wasn't going to be like her being like 50. It was going to be like her being like in her 80s or something.
What?
Like like elderly Rey.
Whoa.
Yeah, no, like way like this was gonna. Yeah,
isn't
this
that
was
like legacy level of a time jump? Like that's like so big that's what, of a jump.
That's what the original stuff was from Snyder. So it makes me wonder if they are still going to somehow maybe incorporate some of that concept potentially into it, because like this is my not to like derail this into a big speculatory podcast, But my thing is if they were so far along in the process with Lindelof writing a script, would they really like go through all that and then throw the script away and then start from ground zero again with Sharneed Shebay and Stephen Knight, or would they pick up the script and continue? Because my thing is like, who knows? Maybe they include the aging thing, but it's just like a time jump at the end of the movie, or something like that. Because it just, like, what would be unexpected for Daisy Ridley? Like, we could be getting way into the weeds and muddy water with this, like, ideas here, but like, what would be like surprising for her? Is it something with Rey? Is it something with, like, I don't even know. Like, and this isn't coming from any speculation or any scoopers or anything, but like, are they going to somehow shoehorn Ben coming back? Like, like maybe something like that. I don't know. Like, it just makes you wonder what they're going to end up doing with her saying unexpected. That's kind of all we really know about this movie so far, is like just that little bit from Snyder earlier in this year, and from the original Lindelof stuff, and then it switched hands to Stephen Knight and Charmin, and then that's it. We don't know anything else.
So there you go. Stay tuned for that one. We're going to be looking with that with great interest. So the big thing we're talking about tonight, Dave Filoni has gotten a promotion alongside of Carrie Beck. I feel like that's not been mentioned enough. Carrie Beck has been a producer that's worked alongside of Kathleen Kennedy. So her and Dave Filoni have both been promoted. So we have Dave Filoni that is going to be working alongside Carrie Beck. They're going to be the ones that are sort of seeing these different projects being made at a much earlier rate. What I mean by that is, paraphrasing everything that was explained in the article, Dave Filoni in years past would kind of would give like help and stuff to projects that were already like being filmed or already had been written, and he would just kind of give like little pointers, like, or little tidbits of help and stuff. But in this point, being promoted to a chief creative officer at Lucasfilm, he's now going to be able to have his hands in the development of any of like the brand new from the ground built up shows. So he's going to have more involvement with these things from the onset rather than maybe already in the middle of development. This is something that I know you, Ben, you've been really hoping for. A lot of people have been hoping for, because frankly, a lot of people have not been happy with Kathleen Kennedy. And, especially with the sequel trilogy films, it was always, it's always being said, oh, there was never a plan. What's going on? There's no cohesive nature at Lucasfilm. Yep. And this seems like there might be perhaps a chance. You did a great job of creating this, comparing this to what's happening at DC, where you have Peter Safran, who is kind of the money guy. And I look at that as kind of what's happening with Kathleen Kennedy. They're the money people. They're dealing with the production budgets and all this sort of thing. And we know that Kathleen Kennedy has been great at doing that. And then maybe what we're seeing is Dave Filoni could perhaps be the sort of James Gunn of the new DC universe, who is more creative, as well as kind of the Kevin Feige of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like those people are kind of the ones that are just keeping all the things moving at the right pace. They all have a cohesiveness to them. Yep. Where they might be different projects. You have your Andors, you have your Ahsokas, you have your Skeleton Crews, like, and whatever animated things, right? So I'll throw it over to you, Ben. What's your initial take, your reaction to hearing this news? This comes to us, by the way, from Variety. So this is as official as it gets. Even Dave Filoni had talked about
Dave got
this,
interviewed.
He commented on this. So this is actually real.
Yeah. So okay. So here's So from the jump, I was just stunned when I saw the news because, like I said earlier to start the show, I wasn't expecting any Star Wars news at all this week. And then we get arguably like the biggest Star Wars news story we've had in, God knows how long. But I do want to put out there for our listeners and eagle-eyed viewers and everything. Like when it comes to like this thing, like we mentioned, it's kind of like the DC thing with Peter Safran and James Gunn. But the thing is that fans need to keep an eye on with this is like I've seen chatter online, of course, as you can imagine. People are like, "Oh, Dave Filoni's taken over Lucasfilm and blah 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 and all this stuff." Well, Kathy's still like involved, obviously. Like the people in the room now, it's Kathy, Dave, and Carrie Beck. But the thing is, that's interesting with it is like Carrie Beck's position is a developmental position. So like Dave's is like the creative side where so basically like so Dave and Carrie Beck are basically like James Gunn split in half for all intents and purposes. Like, Dave is handling like the creative, like you said, Chris, like the cohesiveness, like the little details for say Andor behind the scenes or Ahsoka or whatever. And then like Carrie Beck, since like she's actually like the development person, she's the green light person basically. Like that's what she's doing because like since she's overseeing development, development in terms of like studio talk, it's like she's the green lighting person here. Like that's not. I mean, Dave specifically says like he's not saying no to project. He literally said he's not deciding whether projects are going or not. So the thing is, that's what was kind of like overlooked in this whole discussion with fans online. People are just assuming Dave's like taking over, but Dave is kind of like, I would say almost like I said, James Gunn or Kevin Feige, like he's the creative side of those people, but Carrie Beck is actually the one who has the quote unquote like power to like green light or red light a project. So, but the thing is with people like before anybody like, because I'm sure people will like jump the gun on that whole thing too. The thing is with it, like we got to remember, like Carrie Beck's been working with Dave for a long time. So her and Dave are close. So I'm sure like she probably has like similar views on Star Wars as he does, I would assume, since they are working on so many projects together. So it's cool just seeing kind of like both of them, like a collaborative effort. And I mean, quite frankly, I would rather have two people in the room, Dave and Carrie Beck, versus just one being Dave or one being Carrie Beck, because, like, to be quite frank, like James Gunn, it makes me nervous with DC because it's like, man, if his vision, like for all our viewers out there, I'm the biggest Superman fan in the world, and I'm terrified about the Superman movie just because of everything surrounding that whole situation. But the thing is, when you have one person in the room, it's kind of like power unchecked, basically. So it's nice that you have like two people in the room for three people including Kathy, but two people to bounce ideas off of with Dave and Carrie Beck versus just one person. So I really like this arrangement they've set up. And we can like dive into it because there's like plenty to talk about with this, like for future implications and everything else.
Yeah, I do want to actually quote this article exactly so everybody's on the same page of what we're talking about with these details. So, as it says on Variety, Kathleen Kennedy will serve as a president of Lucasfilm, and Carrie Beck as head of development. Filoni weighs in on a narrative level while Kennedy oversees Lucasfilm, and Beck brings other filmmakers into the fold. So yeah, exactly as we were saying, it's all about that. And he's basically saying, this is a quote from Filoni, "I'm not telling people what to do," he added, "but I do feel I'm trying to help them tell the best story that they want to tell. I need to be a help across the galaxy here, like a part of the Jedi Council almost." So that's a great kind of look into what's happening. I mean, just peeling apart this a little bit more, as you said, Ben, it's great to see how far Filoni has come, right? We see the Clone Wars was over 10 years ago.
From Avatar to here.
Oh, yeah. And I couldn't think of a better person to really lead Lucasfilm because it's in the spirit and the honor of George Lucas. Like, there's nobody out there, to my knowledge, that George Lucas has spent more time shepherding into the mystic sides of the Force and whatnot as they worked hand in hand with the Clone Wars. This guy is the heir apparent of George Lucas. So it makes great sense that he has dealt with I feel like he's had a great track record. Sure, he is not perfect. There's things that we can all agree or disagree on that, maybe it wasn't that great, or maybe there's too much nostalgia here at moments. Does it really need to be that way? But I think when it all comes down to it, this guy cares about Star Wars just like you, me, and anybody that's watching this. He's a diehard fan. He cosplayed as Plo Koon before he even got the job. I mean, this guy is one of us. So he is going to treat this franchise with respect, and he's not just some, greedy executive that is just coming in to change things around. The fact that Kathleen Kennedy had to have been her decision and Iger's decision and whoever else at the Disney brass, seen what he's done with the Mandalorian verse, what he's done with Ahsoka. I'm guessing a lot of this had to do with Ahsoka because that's the most recent thing. They looked at that and said, hey, we can get this guy. And just think about how we just wanted Filoni to just do something in live action. And you see how far he has come, going from Clone Wars, going from directing his first episode in The Mandalorian, the very first episode, I believe, season 1, episode 1. It was like, whoa, this guy's branching out. Then he basically gets announced to be directing a movie. Then he basically directs, or not directs the whole thing, but writes an entire live action series. And here we are today where he is one of the leaders of Lucasfilm. And we know he had his hand in the pot for a lot of things. Like he traveled to Pinewood in London to oversee some stuff with The Last Jedi when that was being filmed. And he's been very heavily handed in a lot of these things. But for me, it just makes sense, and I'm happy to see that they are acknowledging them, because a lot of us felt like this was the most natural way forward. And I think this will appease a lot of the fans. I really do. I think as you look at the implications of what this means, is we can't have these trolls on the internet going after Kathleen Kennedy as much as they are anymore, because guess what? You might as well put your fingers at Filoni and Carrie Beck then as well, because it's not her, it's a committee of people that are steering the ship.
Well, I will throw it out there, though. It's not all trolls, because she did earn a lot of the criticism she deserved. But yeah, like now I do think, this is a good also PR move for Lucasfilm, especially after a week ago before this. You had Taika Waititi going out and riling up all the fans and everything. And like they pretty much squashed that immediately by putting this news out there, because they could have kept this news completely quiet, because, for example, like when Dave got his promotion like 3 years ago to whatever position he was in prior to this, like his like senior creative executive, whatever the prior role was for this position, that got like pretty much leaked like 8 or 9 months after the fact that he already had gotten that. Like this is actually, it's nice that they put this out there officially. Yeah. And like they let him make a statement on it and everything. So now, it gives a lot of goodwill for fans. Obviously, with this promotion though, like John Campea said, hey guys, remember all the upcoming shows and things coming out next year or that have been filmed, like they're not on Dave Filoni's resume because he wasn't involved in them. Like Skeleton Crew. If you have, say, worst case scenario, Skeleton Crew, Acolyte, and/or Bad Batch, like, or like say the 3 live action shows, say they all bomb, like, Dave wasn't involved in those basically. Like, so people do have to remember that. Like Dave, we're still like a couple years away from him actually being, like actually part of this role. But the interesting implication with this thing is, I wonder if he's going to be touching the Daisy Ridley movie now that he has this, because they're not done even writing that script. So it makes you wonder if he's gonna help just a little bit here and there with that, or maybe the James Mangold Jedi stuff. Like, there's plenty of things Dave can like interact with now, and like he's pretty much like a high level consultant. So it just it's going to be interesting to see where like he goes with this. I just think it's a really good move by Lucasfilm. Like they've made a lot of questionable mistakes in the past on certain moves, but this is one move that like was well deserved, I think, by most people's accounts. And I remember a good point like last week when all this news broke, like when John Campea talked about it on his show. Like he mentioned, the really good thing we've seen about Dave Filoni is he's constantly learning and improving. Because, like, his Clone Wars movie, not great. And then when you get into the Clone Wars show, it improves and improves, like season by season by season. Season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like, it improves by every season. And then even his live action debut in Mando, it was definitely, like, Mando season 1, episode 1. It was a great way to start the Mandoverse, but when you watch that, it's not the best directed. But then when you get to his next episode later in the season, it's a little bit better. And then when you get to his stuff in Mando season 2, it's better. And then Ahsoka, it's better directing, better just, overall like story drive, etc. Like, so I think, that was a good point, like even Campy made, like where it's like he's constantly learning and improving, and that's a really important thing for someone versus just like, say, sticking in their ways and continuing to like, just not improve. And it's great that Dave continues to do that.
Oh yeah. It's great because he's a very humbled guy. He is there to basically, he's almost like a Jedi himself, right? He's constantly learning the ways of the Force. He's learning how to navigate, and he's going beyond his limits to discover. And I feel like people like that are the best with positions like this because they're able to kind of see a different perspective of things. And again, I keep going back to his passion, his understanding of what, he wants as a fan himself, which, would go for a lot of us as well. I think a lot of it is to do with him orchestrating, being an architect for the first Star Wars connected universe on screen, right? Him working hand in hand with Jon Favreau, able to create something that is so popular, so profound in the fandom and mainstream everywhere. Take that knowledge and apply it to the brand, bring the reputation, the power of the brand itself, not just on screens on the TV, but hopefully to the movies. Like you said, you got to look to this 3, 4, 5 years from now is when we're going to really be like, oh, this is the golden era. Hopefully we'll be like, oh, this is the golden era of Star Wars right now. Everything is just high quality. It's being made. It's appeasing to the hardcore fans, but it's also a lot for the mainstream as well. There's a happy balance or a happy medium. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the good thing, like with Dave. I've said it consistently about him through these shows, for example. You can watch pretty much all, especially like say his live action stuff. My big concern going into one of Dave's live action episodes was the Ahsoka episode in season 2 of Mando. Was like, okay, is this going to be all a bunch of inside baseball stuff where it's like, your mom can't watch it because she hasn't watched 7 seasons of Clone Wars or something. So, and then you get into that episode in Mando, and you can watch it just as an isolated episode and get that, oh, she's a former Jedi Knight. Oh, she, even if you are a casual Star Wars fan, you can probably pick up on that she knew Anakin or something because she knew something went on in the past, obviously, like just the way she talks about Grogu and everything. So like, you have a lot of stuff. Like he makes his episodes in a way where pretty much anybody can watch them, but hardcore fans still appreciate the details that are like getting put out there. So I think that's a really good sign, especially when it comes to like this role, because that means maybe in like these shows, like we'll get more and more little details. Like say like, okay, I mean, Andor season 2's pretty much about done. So like, obviously he's not going to be involved with that, but let's say there was an Andor season 3, like instead of, for example, like, say if Tony Gilroy throws in, like, a just random new planet, instead of that, like, Dave would be like, no, just, why not just reference, Dantooine or something? Why not reference another planet? Like, something like that. Like, that's where Dave can contribute to some of these shows, that you're not even expecting. Like, maybe it'll make things just more cohesive a little bit better. Like, oh, hey, you're having this take place, in this part of the galaxy. Well, right next door is, like, Yavin 4. So instead of referencing a new planet that's next to this planet, just reference Yavin 4. Like stuff like that. So like, yeah, there's a lot of little details like that. I feel like Dave can just drop into certain creators on these shows. So it's going to be interesting for that. And then even like, say like the future going forward, like, now if we get a second season of Acolyte, like they'll be able to maybe give more Jedi lore to the people working on Acolyte. Like, so there's so much potential for the future. But like you said, this is basically, for anybody listening, this is basically for 2025 forward. This isn't anything to do with 2024.
Yeah. So when it comes to, I think the amount we can speculate from here to the cows come home kind of thing on like what we think his involvement's going to be. Yeah. So I mean, here's the thing. They already have story group. I feel like that Pablo Hidalgo, Matt Martin, Emily Scukani, all those people out there on the story group are the ones that are giving them the plan and ideas, saying, "Oh, you guys got to use this, or not gotta, but you should just put this in your script." Yeah. I feel like what happens with the story group is like, a writer will go in and write something, and they'll just say, maybe in their script they'll just say like the draft will say like insert planet name here or insert location here, and then story group will be like, oh, we think this would be a good fit in this sector of the galaxy this planet exists. I think Filoni is going to be the fixer for a lot of the issues that we might have had in recent times of the mythology of the Force, like the touchstones, like the touch points of Star Wars. He is going to work from the macro level, I believe, of like, imagine George Lucas. Imagine the input that George Lucas would have on something if he was still giving credit to Disney, if he was still working with Disney. I think that's kind of the oversight. So for instance, like he's going to really be able to dig in to the Force of Joseph Campbell, the mythology, going into the philosophy of things, maybe political stuff like that, where it's like, we often think about, like, I know you're talking a lot about Andor over the years, about doesn't feel Star Wars enough. And I think Filoni will be there as like that check person to be like, okay, I'm just not feeling this. You guys have to insert, maybe play around with this concept, maybe play around with these characters a little bit, because this will make it feel more like Star Wars.
Yep. I think that's a good point. I heard one of my other friends, another show, talk about that. That was a good example. So like their exact example was Andor. And, for example, say if Filoni was in the room, obviously Andor will play out how it would for the most part. But Filoni, if he's in the room there, seeing this stuff get wrote out with Gilroy and everybody, maybe Filoni's like, yo, I get this for like a lot of the like really serious hardcore viewers, whatever. But, another big portion of the Star Wars fans probably would be turned off by this. So why not just sprinkle in a little bit more of this stuff just to make it appeal? Then it appeals to everybody, So like that's a really good example there, just because it's like, I think, like you said, he's kind of like the check person. I feel like that's probably what a lot of it will be too, is like the check person for like, hey, does this kind of like fit the Star Wars vibe? Does it have the cohesiveness to it? Heck, even one of the most like divisive examples, The Last Jedi, for example. Like, let's say Luke still dies, everything, blah, blah, blah. But instead of, say, sequences playing out like the way they did, being so divisive, maybe like if Dave had this role at the time, maybe he'd be like, okay, Ryan, like, love your idea, whatever, but like, let's workshop something that's maybe not as, like, Luke could still die, etc., but let's workshop something maybe where it's not as potentially divisive, or or not even divisive, because they probably aren't using those words behind the scenes with their coworkers, but not as a potential for like a controversy or something, like something like that. Like maybe Dave like puts a better spin on, like, gives Ryan an idea, and then like Ryan like spins it a little bit more friendly than what it turned out to be. So like, I think with Dave, he's gonna definitely be involved quite a bit, because like for all intents and purposes, like he's pretty much like the top three at Lucasfilm. It's like Kathy and Carrie Beck and him. Like those are the top three people right now. So like he's in the top three of like the highest people at Lucasfilm. So it's just like it makes you wonder what they're going to be doing. And here's another important big thing that I was thinking about. I had to mention on this podcast, since I always complain about Star Wars PR. But now that Dave has this role, they can easily just throw him out whenever they need to. Hey, talk to this outlet, talk to Hollywood Reporter, talk to Variety, talk to this, talk to that, about whatever upcoming projects there are. Because then Dave can talk about any upcoming like projects, say in 2025 further, like he can be that spokesperson potentially for Lucasfilm, because
Oh.
we've because think about it this way: every time we've seen Kathleen Kennedy, and this is not even like me being like some toxic trolling fan, but like every time we've seen Kathleen Kennedy go out, she's always fumbling over something in the media, whether she's like throwing Alden Ehrenreich under the bus just because he doesn't look like Harrison Ford. Like that's literally like just throwing your player right under the bus. Like, that situation, or like even her like whole famous quote of like, we don't have any like lore to base our stories off of, etc. Like, those type of things. Instead of her going out and fumbling around in the media, now they have Dave Filoni or even Carrie Beck to go out and talk to the media now. Because I would be willing to bet anything. I bet we'll obviously still see Kathy talk here and there, but I bet we're going to see a lot more of Dave in the media, like getting interviewed in the coming years, talking shop about Star Wars.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at all the history of behind the scenes with Dave Filoni, he has no problem being in front of the camera. Like, he goes to conventions all the time. He's talking on the mic, like, very comfortable. Yep. He's not like, I won't blanket statement in this, but, there's probably a lot of executives out there that don't want to be bothered by that sort of thing. But Dave Filoni, he was on all the episodes of Rebels Recon getting interviewed by Andy Gutierrez about, what Chopper was doing in episode 5 of season 3, right? Like, he is involved, and I could really see, that's a great point you brought up, Ben, is this could be a turning point in more ways than one for Lucasfilm. This could be a new dawn, as I said before, maybe a golden age, perhaps, of just how cohesiveness works, because you look at what Paul Feige is somebody completely different. I'm putting two people together in my head. Kevin Feige, with his control of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, became the most successful thing in film history. Like, it made billions. It was more popular than Star Wars, to put it lightly, which is the biggest thing. Like, Star Wars was on top since 1977. Nothing could dethrone it until the 2010s is when it started to go the other way. So Disney obviously looking for a figurehead of sorts for the creative. So, and I'm assuming, I don't know enough about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Maybe somebody in the comments can correct me. Maybe Kevin Feige is more like Kathleen Kennedy, and I don't know. I feel like he does have creative input, right? He's not just a money guy. He is not just a budget guy. He is actually maybe workshopping ideas for movies. Is that what he does?
So Kevin Feige's role at at Marvel Studios, it's Feige. There was another can't remember the names, but they were big producers too. But it was Feige. There was another man, and then there was a woman who just recently left. Her name was like Victoria Alonso. I think that was her name. She left recently. But for the main gist of Marvel, it was those three. Like, of course, Kevin Feige. So Kevin Feige, like, really, like, okay. So he was, like I said, Dave's position is kind of like him, Kevin Feige, like part of Kevin Feige, but Kevin Feige was actually like directing the ship on like, hey, our projects are going here. Like, okay, so for for Captain America, this movie, Captain America, that movie, like all the things are going here, and there for the movies. Like, that's how they did it. Like, so it was basically Kevin Feige was like really like directing exactly where things are going. Like he was deciding the stories almost. And like Filoni's more, they're bringing the stories to him, and he's like consulting or helping change bits and pieces of, the story, basically. So like Kevin Feige, I would say, had more control per se, just because he like was really directing, like puppeteering a lot of the MCU.
Yeah.
And Filoni's more of like the consultant, like more of I would say more of like kind of like a powerful consultant, like, where his input matters, because it's like, hey, if I'm James Mangold and I go in there, even though I'm James Mangold, if I go in there and ask stuff about the Jedi, and Dave Filoni, the person who's like third in command arguably at Lucasfilm, tells me this, then that, like, am I going to just turn it down and say, nah, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing instead? Like, so I think the thing is with the position, like, it'll help just give more input on these projects. But like, that's kind of like the difference between Feige and Filoni's positions. It's more, like I said, Filoni and Beck are kind of Kevin Feige combined, because Beck is more of like the power side of things in terms of denying projects or accepting projects. Like, so, and she's like over development, so she's like actually in like the development side of things. Like, hey, this is what we're planning out for the next like 7 years potentially.
And speaking of the long-term plan, I think, the whole episode, guys, is speculation for the most part, but I think what Lucasfilm is doing now is this might be the phase 2 of Disney Plus and Star Wars as we know it, or the phase 2 of the Disney era of Star Wars, because you're bringing in Filoni now. He's not going to have a lot of input on what's happening now. And I think what's happening now is season 4 of Mandalorian, maybe season 2 of Ahsoka, and whatever that movie is for the thing that ends it. So I think what they're looking at now is what's going to happen beyond that. Maybe Filoni's coming in now to start like fresh. They're going to develop, that maybe they have a season 3 of Acolyte that's going to happen in 2026 or something. But when the Mandalorian verse is over, what are they going to do next? What can they possibly do next? Is it going to be another big crossover series? Are they going to do the Andor approach and just do like sprinkling in series that are just randomly around different eras? I think that's really what Lucasfilm wants to, hit home with right now. And the movies as well, right? We're talking about on-screen, animated, live-action series, movies. Those 3 big pillars are what's happening next. And yeah, that is interesting. That's a whole nother conversation for another day. Is like, will they continue with a crossover? He's really good at, sectioning out this show leads into this show with these characters here. But where does the direction of Lucasfilm go from here? Do they look at Mandalorian and say, this was such a big success, we have to emulate this? Or maybe we take a step back, we start experimenting with other formats, other ways, and then maybe 10 years from now we start another crossover as people want that more. Because I think people have been recently looking at Mandalorian verse and just universes in general as being a little bit too much these days.
Marvel.
People, yeah, exactly. Eventually it loses its steam a little bit when the big event ends. So yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking is he's really going to be brought in. They're changing up the hierarchy now because they are preparing for phase 2 of Disney Plus or phase 2 of their storytelling going forward with this shakeup here. Oh
yeah, they are for sure. And like, this is the good thing too. We got to think about, like, out of all our critiques and criticisms, and I could do a 3-hour solo podcast on Kathleen Kennedy and why, why she's done a lot of bad things for Star Wars, and she's done a lot of good things. But I do got to give her credit where it's due. Like, she promoted Dave Filoni to this role. From what I've heard from certain people, like, this was a created role. This wasn't a role someone had prior. Like, there wasn't another person we've never heard of in this role. Like, this was a totally new role for Filoni. So she, her creating and promoting Dave to this role is awesome, because it's like, maybe like, she's reading the room too. Like, hey, people like this guy. Let's promote him. Let's let him be involved. And like, let's get Star Wars more, on track where it's not everything infighting between our fans. Like, we want our fans to be liking the stuff we're putting out versus like debating about it all the time. So it's good that she did that. Also, like, the fact that it's like Dave and Carrie in their roles, it makes me wonder within the next, like, say 5-6 years, there's potential Kathleen Kennedy retires. I think she turns 72 this coming year. Like, she's getting up there in age. So because she turned 70, I think 2 years ago, because we were doing a podcast around the time of her birthday. I think she turned 70 or 71. So like, she's getting up there in age. So like, and it's not even me like trying to push her out the door, but a lot of people do retire when they hit like 65, 70, like in that range. So like, maybe she put these Carrie and Dave in place as kind of pseudo successors to the company. Obviously, they would hire. I'm sure they would hire somebody as like a president, like in that role. But the fact that they have Carrie and Dave in this position is great because they're both young. Dave's only 49. I don't know how old Carrie Beck is, so they could be in there potentially another 25 years if they want to be. So we have like a good long while with these two creatives in there, and it's like you said, Chris, this is like this is a long-term play. This isn't a short-term play at all. This is like this is like a 7-year move versus a 1-year move.
Yeah, I wasn't really thinking about the whole Kathleen Kennedy leaving aspect and transition period, but I still, like you said, even if they replaced her at one point, I don't care either way. But yeah. I still like the idea of a triumvirate, the one guy creative, the one person dealing with finding out who's best to tell these stories, right? Getting the writers, getting the directors, getting the cinematographers, any other person at the top that's overseeing everything with budgeting, with money, with how things are in marketing in general, just being the figurehead. So I think that's a great plan. It's better because like you look at what's happened in the past, right? The prequels, George Lucas, he was infamous for like being all the people reporting to him as yes men, right? Like all these different directors and these other people that were involved. Was it Rick McCallum kind of like that person? Like he kind of was just like, okay, we'll just do whatever you say.
Well, and the thing too back then, it's hard to like say no to like say George Lucas, obviously like at the time creating the most iconic brand in Hollywood history. So like, there's that, and on top of it, the Lucas's prequels, like they were self-funded. So like there wasn't Disney, there wasn't Fox, there wasn't anybody involved. Like if you think about it, if you look up, there's a famous article, I think it's from a Variety or Hollywood Reporter back in 1999, back in the early days of the internet, or it might have been from like the New York Post's website. But it's like the only true indie movie in history, and George Lucas self-funded Phantom Menace for like $120 million or whatever it was.
Yikes.
So like back then, obviously, like how can you as an underling, you can't say no to the dude who created it and who. You just got to help them fulfill their vision, basically. So, like, now with this whole thing, like you said, it's more of like a collaborative effort between, say, the 3 people at the top. And the thing as well, when it comes to, like, the situation with Star Wars, obviously you have Carrie and Kathleen involved. But the thing is with Dave, now, like I said earlier, they can put Dave out there like they do. Marvel throws Kevin Feige out left and right to every media outlet, interviewing about upcoming projects, upcoming shows, upcoming movies, upcoming animated projects, whatever. He's at different conventions talking about, these are the future plans, blah, blah, blah. Like, Dave can be almost that, like, pseudo PR person. Like, maybe, here's the thing for you, Chris. When you go to Celebration in a couple of years, because I think you're planning on thinking of going to the Japan one, correct?
Oh, yeah, I'm thinking about it, that's for sure.
Okay, so, like, instead of, obviously Kathleen Kennedy would be there, but likely maybe Dave's the one up there majority talking about the upcoming projects coming out or something instead of her, because like, he's the creative person now. Like, so it opens up a lot of really, I think, goodwill avenues for Lucasfilm. Like they've been desperately needing good PR and good, like goodwill with the fans. And this is like, this is pretty much like your home run right here. This is your home run grand slam. Like they nailed it on this.
Oh, hell yeah. They definitely did. Yeah, I'm excited to see what the future holds now. I really am. This is a great get for Lucasfilm. And this is funny because it's like, this is a lot of what the fans have wanted. There's a large fan base as well that's very against this whole thing, of course. And these are the people that were happy with the Clone Wars, erasing the EU. So you're gonna get people that are thinking that Star Wars really is dead now because they're like, well, they're just gonna give in to this guy's everyone. That's not what's happening. I like how Dave Filoni came out and said, no, I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm here to help shepherd in new projects. We're here to guide the ship. I think it only goes up from here. I really do.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like the good thing with Dave is he's definitely going to incorporate certain things. Like we've already seen it with Thrawn. We've seen it with so many things. Like he'll incorporate EU related things, I'm sure. Like if when they go back to like the old Republic era, I'm sure they'll incorporate certain aspects from the old EU, old Republic as well. Like, I'm sure they'll do different things like that just because he's aware of what like, people want. I mean, that's why do you think he had Ahsoka say, "Oh, there's always truth in legends." Like, So like obviously Dave's aware of those things. So, you have that, and then you have like I don't know. I just really think with this whole thing with Dave, it's it's like it's such a unique role. It's such a good thing they put out there. And yeah, I just it's just a move I think that they can't go wrong with it. Like they can't go wrong because it basically shuts down a lot of just the talk online, or like a lot of in my opinion, like in the past week since this news came out, like a lot of like the Star Wars negative talk online is completely gone. Like because when you scroll through social media, you're not seeing near as much negative Star Wars talk now because people subconsciously have in the back of their heads, well, at least in the future, like Dave's involved with these projects, so like we know it's heading in the right direction, potentially. So, so you have that to think about, and then, yeah, like I just think it's a win-win situation, honestly, for Lucasfilm, for Disney, for Dave. Obviously, I'm sure it wasn't leaked or anything, but I am very sure that was a really nice pay raise he made from just working on shows to basically like top 3 at Lucasfilm. That was probably a nice pay bump for him personally. Like I'm sure he was smiling too in that interview because of that. Because you have that, and then just it's a win-win for the fans. Like it really is. Like it's just a good all around vibe around Lucasfilm. And also, I saw as well, if you hadn't caught it, I don't remember if it was in this interview or it might have been in another interview he did this week. But Dave also, if you hadn't caught on, he spoke real interestingly. It might have been later in this article, but he mentioned the Ray Stevenson thing. If you hadn't caught that, he said it. He talked about it in such a nice way, where like they asked him about the potential of like recasting and stuff, and like Dave danced around it in a really nice way. I think it was later in this article, or it might have been, like I said, he got interviewed a couple times this week, but he talked about the Ray Stevenson thing, and he pretty much just like said, like he didn't give a no to recasting. Like that's pretty much what came out of it. Like he pretty much said we'll see what the story brings, blah blah blah, and he said because that was when he was talking about the potential of the second season of Ahsoka. Because Dave, like they asked him, and he said, well, he flat out said, well, at least I have Ezra back and everything. And he pretty much said like, we'll see about Ahsoka season 2. Like, he obviously gave the real politically correct answer, like of not answering. But then they went on to like talk about the Ray Stevenson subject, and that's where he pretty much, like I said, he danced around it and didn't shut the door on the recasting thing. So like it makes me wonder, like we might actually end up getting a recast on that character, which like the good thing about that for anybody like concerned about it, like having Dave involved, Dave like steering it, like even just the way he answered the questions, like that, like right there, like it's an example of like, hey, like he knows how to talk to the media. He's not out here fumbling words around going, oh no, we'll never recast her. Oh no, we're not going to recast someone because they don't look like the actor. Like he's not fumbling his words around. Like he danced around it real politically correct and like kept it moving. And it's like, it's so nice and refreshing that, we get someone like that being involved in the leadership of Star Wars now.
Oh yeah. Well, we're very much looking forward to see how things shake out, but I think it is time to leave it there. So there you go. We will be back next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see if any Earth galaxy shattering news happens between now and then. You can always follow the channel, youtube.com/Starrapter, where you see me talking about comics. I have my review for Star Wars The High Republic Phase 3 Trials of the Jedi, the latest book that is out for that. I have a review for that on the channel right now. And it's called The Eye of Darkness. A very, very good Star Wars book. So check out my review for that there. For what's more coming down the pipe, please subscribe to the channel and do hit that bell icon so you'll be notified when we go live and whenever new videos are uploaded. Ben, where can the people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter talking
X.
about Star Wars, or X. Yeah, I guess it's called X now. The platform formerly known as Twitter. You can find me on there talking about Star Wars or sports or me getting back on the grind of this fitness journey and losing weight and stuff. At Real Ben Maynard, and you can find me on Instagram as well. Talking fitness stuff at Real Ben Maynard, and also you can find Milton on Instagram because he likes to post his workouts, and then he'll post like on his stories he'll post like his recipes or some stuff from his healthy eating as well at Milton7Weber.
There you go. So for Milton, who couldn't be here, for Ben, for I, Chris, aka Starrapter, that's gonna do it. That was episode 130 of Outer Rim Transmission. Thank you for watching. May the Force be with you, and transmission.